As some of you know, Marc is responsible for the company's subscription and direct consumer services, including All Access, CBSN, CBS Sports HQ, ET Live, Noggin, BET Plus, and ViacomCBS Digital Studios. So obviously he's been very busy over the past few years. Since joining in 2011, Marc has guided the company to become the leading multi-platform content company in the ecosystem. And in early 2021, CBS All Access will be rebranded as Paramount Plus as the ViacomCBS's evolving strategy in streaming portfolio really start to come into focus. So with that backdrop, we're going to dive in with a little bit of a conversation. So Marc, I think it's important to really start at the beginning here. You launched All Access in 2014. That same year, I believe you also launched CBSN, the news platform. In a lot of ways, this gives us about 5 to 6 years of a head start. So what advantages does that provide Viacom and the forthcoming launch of Paramount Plus?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Great to be here with you guys. Yeah, look, we've been in this game for a little bit of time. I don't know if we're a wily veteran, as you're talking football, or if we're still sort of in our prime. But 2014 was early, right? We were one of the first to launch a branded consumer service around a large television network. We did 2 services in 3 weeks because we launched CBSN 3 weeks later. That was really stupid for our own personal lives, but it's worked out incredibly well. It's not necessarily about the lead with consumers, which we do have. We have millions of subscribers. We have millions of people who have actually subscribed and potentially churned out over the years. We have a large database of users we can go back to as we go to market a bigger and broader and more diverse service as we transform into Paramount Plus. But I would say that the big advantages the team has from being in that space and being together for as long as we have been, because many of the lead executives are still here in some of those roles, is just the knowledge we have on how to drive customer acquisition, customer retention, how to drive engagement, how to drive a really incredible ad experience for users on that front. We take all of that consumer-facing part of our business incredibly diligently and seriously, and with that view in mind. And so I take all those learnings, all that data, all the content testing that we've done, and now layering it against a significantly larger set of assets, moving from 10, 15,000 episodes in movies to 30,000, expanding our live footprint to so many more things, having the news business grow the way it has, the sports business grow the way it has, and now having all these additional entertainment networks to work through those systems. It's really been tremendous to have all those things in place as we embark on sort of this next journey into the future.
Excellent. And, on the growth side, it's been a great story. I think that, ViacomCBS forecasted 25 million domestic subs between All Access and Showtime in early 2020. Can you talk about what are the growth drivers toward this and how the pandemic has played a role in driving consumer and subscriber adoption?
Yeah, I think the goal you're setting there is from back when we were just CBS and we were setting the Showtime and CBS goals for 2022. I'd say we're probably in the midst of revising those in one direction or another, as you could guess. What we put out there was guidance for the year. For this year, we put out guidance that we would have around 16 million subscribers by year end. The amazing part was that we beat that number by June 30th. So COVID certainly, I think, added some fuel to the fire there, and people staying at home and watching the services. And we made some efforts to sign up more folks with some additional free trials. But I think it also just goes to the fact that we've been adding content. We had a number of originals effectively in the can. And then in August, we did what was called the preview launch of Paramount Plus, which was adding 3,500 episodes from across the portfolio of Viacom brands, right? Where we added Nickelodeon and BET and Comedy Central and MTV and Smithsonian Channel into that mix, in addition to locking up the UEFA Champions League rights a year early and launching a new original in Star Trek Lower Decks and having Big Brother been delayed into August. So you added all that together, we had a tremendous August. We raised guidance in our August earnings call to 18 million for the year. So we're really on a great and incredible growth trajectory. Subscription and video revenue has been growing in the sort of 50% range for us in the first half of the year. So we feel like we're on that rocket ship and we're just trying to steer it in the right directions.
Awesome. So, starting in 2014 when All Access was launched, obviously, a head start in the industry, but fast forward to today, it's a very crowded marketplace, especially from a SVOD perspective. So with so many premium services in the market, really, what's different about Paramount Plus? And can you talk a little bit about the long-term vision for the service and for the folks on the call?
Yeah, I mean, I started at the first two, big points, which are we believe that the subscription growth and direct to consumer is going to be massive over the next 3 to 5 years, to upwards in the neighborhood of 200 million subscriptions up for grabs. And we posit that potentially those top 2 or 3 are pretty well distributed. So as effectively the third, fourth or so, provider in the space, we have a huge opportunity to grab onto a number of those subscriptions. So just lay out the opportunity to start. Second thing is that we are the #1 television company in the United States. We have the most ratings, we create the programming, we have the popular thing, sort of across the board there. So we think, we come with a programming expertise capability and heft that, I don't want to say is unmatched, but it's pretty close, right? It's up there. It is #1. It's, whether you debate whether it's unmatched on the subscription side is a little tough. So the long-term vision for us is saying, how do we differentiate in that space and really make people recognize that our businesses are ones that they need to, want to participate in as consumers. We start with the positioning of the service, which is for Paramount Plus is live sports, breaking news, and a mountain of entertainment. That mountain of entertainment is really the key starting point that you have to from all services like this. You have to have key things, and we've seen 30,000 episodes and movies is where we're going to end up by the early part of next year. That puts us in the tippy top of the overall ecosystem. A couple folks have a little bit more. You're never going to watch all 30,000 episodes, I promise, as an individual human. So the goal is, do we have it in a diverse enough type slate of programming? We have kids. We have, adult entertainment, we have animation, we have reality, we have drama, we have comedy, we have all the different pieces that really can make a robust service. Then you add to it an incredible news operation in CBS News and a 24/7 live streaming network in CBSN, which has been growing hundreds of percent year over year. And then you layer on it all the major sports from your local CBS stations, including NFL and March Madness and SEC and golf, all those pieces, and some exclusive sports rights we've dove in on like UEFA. You really see that sort of trifecta come together in that service. And then we also play in the premium end of the marketplace with Showtime, and we play in the free end of the marketplace with some of our direct apps like CBSN and HQ, but also with Pluto, right, which is our broad-based free service. And so we're really attacking the consumer on those 3 levels, and we really feel like, as this market evolves, we'll be in the right place for, we have something for everyone, basically, is the way I would lay it out.
Awesome. So, I think it's appropriate, given the organizers and hosts for today, Brand Innovators, to talk a little bit about the brand. Tell us about the decision behind naming the new service Paramount Plus, and how do we plan to market it?
Yeah, and I start with, it was not an easy decision, and yet it was, right? When it came down to it, we first had to make the decision: were we going to rebrand this service? Were we going to keep it CBS All Access or do something innovative with that name? And I think what we decided was that CBS is an incredibly powerful brand, for television, and incredibly powerful in sports and news and entertainment. And we didn't want to lose that capability and the heft that came with. So we needed to find something that could sit sort of above that brand, as well as 5 or 6 other brands in MTV and Nickelodeon, and stand for kids and stand for a reality and stand for all those pieces. And what came out of that is that we could invent a new brand, which would cost, lots and lots of money and take time to build up brand equity, or we could take one of the larger brands inside our portfolio. And frankly, that's where Paramount stood out. We did the research. It has incredible global and domestic awareness. And when you see that curtain raiser, the stars flying across the river and landing on that mountain, and that majestic feel that it gives you, we did the research, and what it tells consumers is that something big is going to happen. And they don't necessarily know what, because all the movies in the Paramount history have different connotations. You have Top Gun, you have Goodfellas, you have Anchorman, you have all kinds of different things. So it didn't necessarily stand for any one thing except for big entertainment. And it's one of the most iconic brands in the history of Hollywood. So transforming to a brand that could mean almost anything in there, but also had that big entertainment feel that we could lean into, made all the sense in the world. And so that's why we're headed in that direction. We don't intend to lose any of the equity of the brands within the service. They will thrive. They will have their own homes within the service. If you're coming in and you're going to watch only this type of content, go to store by that brand. And we think that the Paramount Plus plan can really thrive above it. And obviously, we added the plus to it to denote that it was a streaming service and that it was premium. As some have joked with us, it's kind of hard to be plus the Paramount, right? Which literally means the top. But our point there is more about indicating to consumers what we mean, in what we're delivering in the service, and we think it's going to work very well. The work we have to do is we have to convince audiences that news and sports can thrive within something named Paramount, and I think that's that's the task we have over the next few years. But I certainly think it's one we're up to.
Awesome. So, it's funny you mentioned Anchorman. I think I was playing with the idea of the title for this, and I kept coming the phrase of when he I'll send you a meme on it. Throwing back to our old buddy Jim. But shouting it from the top of the mountain, I think was like the one phrase that kept coming back in my brain on that.
Yeah, it did make our value proposition really nice and catchy, right? Live sports, breaking news, mountain of entertainment. We're going to lean into that mountain. It's the most recognizable part of the logo. Everybody says the stars, which we reduced in the new logo and made fit a little bit better. But really, and that stands for the stars that started with the studio and all the other things that it means. And at the end of the day, the mountain really stands out. And we think that's going to be the iconic logo that works for us over time.
Fantastic. So shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to kind of go into more of like a strategic conversation. So, the late Sumner Redstone famously coined the adage, content is king. And, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Do you still believe that's true? And how are you thinking about the content investments for Paramount Plus and across the streaming portfolio?
Yeah, look, I do on our services, you have to start with an incredibly high quality user experience, right? It needs to be world class if you're going to ask, tens of millions of people to use it on a monthly basis. And you do need to have the distribution across all platforms to make it accessible to everybody, no matter what they have. So I do think sort of product and quality and user experience and distribution are absolutely key to all of these services. But at the end of the day, they're not subscribing for those things. If you didn't have the right content, or they're not viewing for those things, they're not going to generate that ad inventory for sales teams to sell without that content capability. So I do agree, content is king. Distribution and product might be, queen and prince or princess or whatever the analogy would be. But it does feel like that is going to be the different way we differentiate services. And I really do feel like we have a tremendous value proposition on that front. We are one of the few that's really going deep in live. Both live news and live sports, having those 24/7 live streaming networks in CBSN and Sports HQ for sports and ET Live, the exclusive rights we have on the sports side, as well as the news coverage. And then look, it's going to be about some of the franchises that we invest in. We've shown what Star Trek can do. We've shown what Twilight Zone can do. We have shown what something even like The Good Wife and The Good Fight, even though it's a franchise, it's not the same thing as Star Trek. We're not going to sell a whole lot of Christine Baranski dolls, although I'm sure she would love it. It is something we can really lean into. And so the big one we've announced so far is the investment we're putting into SpongeBob, right? We already have all the back seasons of SpongeBob on the service and the Nickelodeon brand. We have announced that we were going to pick up the theatrical movie that was supposed to go this year. That'll become a direct-to-consumer offer in the service when we relaunch early next year. And the spinoff from that movie, Camp Coral, which is sort of young SpongeBob and his friends, is coming to the service exclusively around the same time. So really do feel like, we have a number of opportunities like that. We haven't announced them all, but that's one. We're obviously investing in a big way into The Godfather with the series we announced, The Offer, which is sort of the telling of the story of making that movie. It doesn't necessarily mean where we're headed with the overall franchise, but we are looking at the IP within the company and how we can use it to really differentiate the service. And we don't just want to be a service of reruns. We're going to have and remakes and reboots. We have tremendous, what I call originals, as well. We've done a great job of Why Women Kill. And we have a number of other ones coming out later. The Stand, which is sort of IP and sort of original from the Stephen King book, coming in December, and a number of others next year. But we really do have some tremendous capabilities inside the company. Are going to use those to differentiate.
And personally, what are you looking forward to?
All right, I have this little favorite that's coming a little bit later this year, which is a documentary series that we commissioned about high school football in Texas that is played in small enough towns where they cannot field a full-size team, so they play 6-on-6 football. And we followed around a team that had won the previous 2 state championships, even though their town only has 650 people in it or so. It's called Texas 6. It's about a high school in a town called Strawn, Texas, and it is honestly, I've only watched the first 4 or 5 episodes right now because they're still being cut, but they are amazing. Once you're in, you feel for this team and these young men and what this coach is teaching them, and it is just both fun and heartbreaking at times, and just an awesome piece of work. And I'm really excited to see how the consumer audience reacts to that. And a really small thing we picked up, sort of earlier in the year. So I'm curious to see how that one plays. But I'm excited about, Star Trek Discovery's back next week for season 3. We've got season 1 airing on CBS to try to give it a bit of a boost of awareness. And then we have The Stand from Stephen King coming at the end of the year. And he wrote us the 9th extra coda episode to this mini, and it is just an incredible ride, through that text on the screen here. So, I mean, we have just so much coming in the next few months. It's going to be great.
Awesome. And I've been a huge fan of a lot of the docs coming out. The Console Wars, if I could put a plug in, was pretty amazing as well. So keep the docs coming.
We're excited. We have a show in development with that team as well. Like, it could be a dramatic show on that front, but that documentary is really cool. If you're a Nintendo and Sega fan, you want to know how one beat the other and then they both lost, we've got the story.
Yeah. All right. So how do you view the shift in consumer streaming behaviors over time? And really what challenges and opportunities does that open up for brands to consider the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what you're seeing is a massive increase in streaming, right? You're seeing it across the board, AVOD, SVOD, and the mix. We feel really good about how we're positioned on both ends of that spectrum, right? We've got what I would call super premium services in Showtime and BET+. We've got specific things for young kids and Noggin. And then we've got Paramount Plus as our big broad service right now, all access and transforming. And then Pluto, CBSN, Sports HQ, ET Live is some of our free ad-supported services. And I think what we're seeing is just that device transition is really happening. Those connected devices, connected televisions, the Amazon Fires, the Rokus, the Apple TVs of the world are really exploding. And so being able to take advantage of those devices. The other thing I'd say is with our multi-channel partners, the MVPDs and virtual MVPDs of the world, we effectively have authentication rolled out across all of our television brands and across all devices. It's not necessarily with every operator and every device and everything, but we're very, very close to fully distributed there. That just drives a ton of availability for folks that are involved in that multi-channel ecosystem. And that is still the majority of American homes, right, that are subscribing to multi-channel cable. And despite sort of some of the shrinkage on that marketplace, it is still an incredibly vibrant and strong marketplace. And so our view there is we are still having an incredible amount of content and value being driven to users on those platforms. I mean, the biggest platform we have is still the CBS television network, still drives the most viewership. You watch on NFL Sunday, you see it on primetime and daytime and late night. And so I just don't think that shift, we're prepared for how that shift plays out, right? I think we see that consumer behavior and it may go stronger in one direction or another, but we sort of have our play in each area and are able to aggregate those experiences for both consumers and for advertisers on both ends, able to reach those consumers and always do it in what I perceive to be, and I hope is true across our teams, in a very high consumer experience way. We take that incredibly seriously, and always, we have for years about trying to drive, always viewable, always available inventory. We're always looking at how the consumer is not inundated with similar or same advertising across the board and does have that, that frequency diversity and that reach diversity that is really required, not just for the advertiser, but for the consumer sake of it all as well.
Yep. So turning to AVOD a little bit, so shifting from SVOD to AVOD, and I know that there's sort of a spectrum in a way between the two. Bob Bakish, our CEO, has been very vocal about Pluto TV's growth, which recently, I believe, hit 26.5 million monthly viewers. But as you and I know, there's more to the story. So, CBS Interactive had an early and strategic approach as well. Can we double click a little bit on the role of CBSN, and especially in this election year, and how that's driven amazing growth, and also Sports HQ within the streaming landscape? Yep.
So, look, first of all, Pluto's an incredible asset in the portfolio. 25, 30 million, monthly users. But even more impressive, I think, is they are the leaders in what I would call time spent, for those users. We don't disclose that number, but I have seen them, and they are incredibly strong, especially relative to competitors. I think they're the absolute number one in the AVOD space in terms of that total hours and consumption. So really just phenomenal asset. And our other free streaming networks, including some of the ones we've created from the brands, like pieces from MTV and Nickelodeon and others, have created channels on Pluto, as well as CBSN and Sports HQ and ET Live all live within Pluto as well. So it's another form of distribution for us. But specifically on the news side, CBSN and the local strategy that we've spun up around CBSN has really been tremendous. And frankly, we couldn't have imagined a year where it would have been more needed, right, and more appropriate. We've seen hundreds of % growth. We've hit every record you can imagine, from users to streams to minutes. And we've done it numerous times throughout the years. I can't even remember which month now is like the record. We'll probably set it again this month. We'll probably set it again next month. And maybe November, it'll slow down a little bit at the end of the month, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. It has just been, on a rocket ship in terms of viewership. And I think it's because the value proposition we're delivering is really clear. We are giving you what I would call, and down the middle sounds so boring because I don't think it is, but it is down the middle news. It is not taking a position. It is true news. It is 24/7. It is not just always on, but always informative. It's not sitting there in a bunch of repeat hours or a bunch of clips stitched together. It is actually live anchored news. I think we are literally running live somewhere between, it's 24/7, but I think literally live, 18 to 22 hours a day, depending on the day and the news. And that's just an incredible amount of content we're spinning up in that regard. We've created a documentary series there. We've done all the right things from a show and programming perspective to really deliver for that audience. And because it's across all those platforms from being live since 2014, we really have seen this tremendous growth. And then the second leg of that stool this year has been to spin up about 10 local versions of CBSN and all the owned and operated station markets that we have, predominantly New York, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, Bay Area, Philadelphia. And what's happened there is we've seen it's added twofold things to our coverage. One is we've seen people tune in to their local market, but also tune into their not local market for stories that they see on those channels. So we have multiple channels in the interface and really attach to those. And the second thing it's enabled us to do is really capture time of day throughout the world. So I give you the example of when President Trump announced at 1 a.m. on the East Coast that he had COVID the other night. We didn't have somebody sitting anchoring from New York at 1 a.m. because that's just frankly not a great hour for us to garner a lot of traffic. But all of a sudden there was going to be traffic coming. Well, CBSN Los Angeles was live picking up that news, and we pumped that right into the national feed, and everybody got those pieces from our incredible team out in LA. So I look at that, and the amazing part was that I nor the GM of that business, Christy Tanner, had to call anybody to make it happen. It just happened, right? We have a well-functioning and oiled machine, with a tremendous team there making those pieces happen. And then the other one is Sports HQ, which has done phenomenally well. It's been a weird year without sports for a big portion of it, but we're back. NFL is back. UEFA came back for us. And it is our 24/7, news network for sports. And I would just say that every time we see a big event come, we just see the thing keep stair-stepping growth. And obviously we have a huge event coming early next year in the Super Bowl. And, our belief there is that this is really a tremendous asset for the company in terms of, consumers coming in and consuming, but also an incredible opportunity for advertisers and our partners to, put themselves in front of the right audience. Our audience is, effectively the people that care about who wins the game. They're not about the drama. We're not about the noise. We're about the drama on the field or on the court. It's been a weird year for that, to be honest. But, and you think about people that are also, sports gambling is becoming a big thing. It's now legalized in a number of states. It's becoming bigger and broader. And we were very focused on our audience having a very high overlap with that audience as we roll out across, sort of more pieces of the country.
Yeah, I can personally attest to watching a lot of the local Pittsburgh broadcasts. So I'm a huge Pittsburgh sports fan, grew up there. And if I could make a personal plug to possibly blend the two of the local strategy on the news side with the Sports HQ side, I wouldn't be upset about that. But
something we're all talking about. It's hard to do, but it is, we definitely see it. And we have a strong local team and strong national team in sports and news that are talking about how we bring those things together. We happen to have some of the largest local sports properties already in Max Preps and 24/7 Sports, right? We're the leader in high school sports and one of the leaders in college sports and recruiting. So we have a lot of things that I think folks don't remember are in our portfolio, right? Like, the number one podcast at Florida State around football is us. We happen to own that podcast. We happen to do that in probably dozens of cities around the country. So as sports comes back to life here in the end of this year and into next year, we feel like we're going to have really great opportunities to grow that.
Awesome. And make sure to put Boston last on the roadmap just to annoy Jeremy, if you wouldn't mind.
We need to do better football in New York too. It's been a rough couple of weeks.
So zooming out a little bit, Paramount Plus, Pluto, Noggin, CBSN. There's a myriad of Viacom and CBS channel apps and premium offerings between Showtime and BET Plus. So you look at it from a high level, and we've massed really a large and diversified streaming portfolio. What's the philosophy and strategy behind that? Because you look at some of the our competitors, and they're putting a lot of the eggs in just one or two or three baskets, whereas we're much. It appears that we're much more widespread. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, we're a top 5 internet company in the United States by audience, right? We have 200 million plus users. We have something like 150 million plus video viewers across all of our properties. I think 50 million plus of those are watching long form video, typically on a TV glass, but sometimes can be on the other platforms. And, the growth there is just tremendous. And the reason we're able to do that is because we're not just all one thing, right? We are using our brands, our different programming capabilities to drive those audiences online. And we don't ever want to lose that fact because it does help us drive to be that big. There's nobody else in that top that's doing it with one thing. And the people that are in above us on that list are people like Google, which you can understand why they might have slightly more traffic, or Amazon, or Facebook. And those guys are big diversified companies too, and how they go out and approach those audiences. So I feel very strongly that approaching the consumer in that way is the right way. It doesn't mean we're not putting a lot of our eggs in one basket. I would say Paramount Plus is our big play in that regard. Many of the other services and types of content fit within Paramount Plus on a premium basis. That's why CBSN, Sports HQ, ET Live, all of the content from across the networks on a library basis, much of it on a current basis, is all going to be in Paramount Plus with commercials or a commercial-free basis. So I look at that and say, we have made our one big play, or are about to make it, and are in the middle of transforming it. But we're also going to allow the component pieces to drive their own audience and their own traffic to try to drive that for consumers, and that makes a ton of sense. So now, so that I think that works, from a consumer perspective, and I think we're seeing that. We're seeing Pluto drive audience. We're seeing All Access and soon to be Paramount Plus growing. We're seeing Showtime continue to grow as a super premium perspective. We're seeing all these other places work. We're getting that 200 million people in. So consumer wise, we're not going to change what's working. So I think what we need to do is then, for our partners, especially our advertisers, is be able to deliver that as effectively a simple, or at least easy to execute buying tool, right? And I think that's what your team and what David and John on our teams have put together in IQ, is saying, we can allow you to buy across that in these smart ways, and with the tools that we can supply there to be able to deliver that entire audience and all the knowledge that we have about that audience. And the key, by the way, in going in those different buckets, also the data that we get is just tremendous. I don't think there's a company out there other than probably Google or Amazon, probably Facebook, that are getting the type of data from our user base because of the nature of the way we run that business. Think about sports. So many registered users relative to alerts, relative to fantasy, relative to the gambling side of things. Think about our entertainment business. So many registered users relative to All Access and Paramount Plus. Frankly, the only business where we don't force you in a really good and smart way to register is probably the news business, right? And it's probably the business where if we asked you to register, we probably would have less users. So we really can't do that, but neither is anybody else. So we're really in a tremendous position from a knowledge of the user basis to be able to inform that type of product, both for our users and for our advertisers. And I think what we have is also a team that is very smart about how to both program that experience so that it's high quality for the user and for the advertiser, and make it so that let's call it that user usage loop, that ability for people to come back and really keep experiencing us and having those type of loyal and broad user bases is something that grows and thrives for us. We're not one and doneing this. We're not, going out there and buying a bunch of search ads and, dumping you into that product and getting you out of there very quickly. We believe in sort of really only building experiences that can deliver for users over the long run and for real.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them. I mean, in a way, in an era of hyper fragmentation, there seem to be a lot of different personalized experience that aggregate a lot of audiences. It's hard to kind of simplify and distill that down, but how do you support that with as many apps on as many platforms? Before coming to CBS, I thought I had my hands full when I was running AOL on, and across just one app across 18 different platforms. You have I can't even count the number at this point. Now that we're also looking at the Viacom TV Everywhere authenticated side as well. How do you harness that?
Yeah, if you think about it, it's on some we're in the sort of dozen to dozen plus type of platforms, and on some we're on a little bit fewer than that. But no matter what, everybody's got a mobile app, probably on 2 platforms, and a connected TV app probably on 2 to 4 platforms, right? So each brand you see is probably on somewhere between 5 and 10 platforms, and some of them on 12 to 14. It's a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but the key is I think a number of the components on the back end are 100% shared. We're effectively going to move to a single ad platform across all of those pieces. We are moving to effectively a single video player across 95% of those experiences. We share all of that knowledge. Systems are unifying. We have the same billing engine across the majority of those services. So we really do have that infrastructure down, and we have an AI and ML team that is using the algorithms that they've developed that are working on things like Showtime or All Access and leveraging that across all the other platforms. So you get all the basis of knowledge from each of them sharing. And then we really only manage probably what I would call 3 or 4 major platforms to be able to do that, right? All of the entertainment apps sit on a singular platform. News and sports are slightly different user experiences that have to build on their own, but they use a lot of the same technology. HQ, CBSN, ETL are all spun up on effectively the same core live streaming tech. And so you see a lot of sharing in between those pieces, but it is a large team. We're always hiring. If people are out there looking for jobs, we always we're mostly developers and product folks, but we're always out there trying to build the team in the right ways. And it is a growth business for sure. We see each of those things really, thriving. And then there are some things that don't end up growing the way we want to, and we end up sometimes, trimming the portfolio, if and when possible. Not every one of our cable networks has a full TV Everywhere suite. We have eliminated some of those that are on the smaller side, but we certainly see it as an area to invest in. And we want our experiences not just to be for one thing. We sort of look at them and say, if you're coming to one of our apps or sites and you're not getting a choice of how to experience that brand or that event, we probably haven't done it right. So our view is there's probably going to be something free, something authenticated, and potentially something to upgrade to and pay us in on every one of those experiences. It may not be, universal, but it's going to be pretty close to that.
Awesome. So I think we're going to shift gears a little bit and take a couple of questions from the audience. So I have a couple queued up here. First one is, what trends in consumer behavior are particular importance to you and marketers now? And how are people consuming media differently in this day and age?
Yeah, I mean, the one that we've had our eye on for a number of years was the increase in home media spend, right? Which sounds like you're buying more DVDs or something, but it actually means the streaming services increase in spending. And I can't imagine what the 2020 number is going to look like. It's going to be off the charts because of COVID. It'll be really interesting to see how that pans out. But it was already on a trend of up and up and up, which is really interesting to us. Because that wasn't I think the initial logic, right? People were saying, they may be spending less on their media. They're looking for more free things. Nope, prices are up, it's going up. So that was one of the ones that we really looked at. I think, look, connected television, I almost feel like I'm a year late in saying it, although we've been saying it for 5, is that is, 80-85% of the viewership on any platform in which we are able to put, full and robust content on is going to the television. So internet on your television is real. We've brought TV back to the TV that way, and I think that's going to thrive into the future. So being on those platforms is absolutely key. I think other startups out there, and not to be named, have thought, no, mobile's everywhere, and I do think there's certainly places for that. But if you're talking about long form, high value content, it's going to be on the TV screen, and we need to be there. And then look, I think the democratization of industries is real by the internet, right? And so you see it in everything, right? You see it from fitness with Peloton to razors with Harry's to, like you name it, up and down the value chain. It's there. It's happening to us in television, but I think it's happening to us in a really unique way where we as the large content creators have the ability to take control of our destiny in that regard. And I think you see, 2, 3, 4 companies, actively doing that. And so thinking about it, not just as consumer media trends, just consumer trends, right? Like you're going to order your, everything over the internet or, find a way to do that, that we need to be there in front of those big folks. And I think that's what we're leaning into very hard throughout the team.
Excellent. So next question, how do you see the audience demographic expanding to be more diverse and inclusive as the industry grows and evolves? And, I know part of the answer is probably, I've seen some of the stats on UEFA, which is a very international, multicultural experience. Aside from that, tell us about how on the programming side and experience side, we're tapping into those audiences.
Look, I think, part of the strategy of Paramount Plus and the transformation from all access is to diversify and age down the audience. Not that we were necessarily old, but the average age of a subscriber on CBS All Access, up until now is usually about in the mid 40s. And all the folks that we've signed up in August and September, since the preview launch happened, we launched all those new brands, we launched UEFA, the average is in the mid 30s. So we're like getting 10 years younger over time. It didn't fully average down. We only added so many subs in those 2 months, but it's been a tremendous move. And I think has also become much more diverse, the type of programming, kids programming, you're adding UEFA, you're adding BET, you're adding MTV, you're adding VH1 to those mixes, how that works. And CBS programming is getting more diverse over time as well, right? As you've seen the transformation of the network and what they've been putting on there. So I do feel like our programming is going to drive that, and it already is. And that is a key to our growth strategy because the core streaming audience is 18 to 49. And if we're averaging at the high end of that, you're only playing in one part of the playing field. And if you look what YouTube has done on the younger side of the audiences and why we have a business like VDS, like ViacomCBS Digital Studios, is really to grow that social audience on YouTube, on Facebook, and really build that younger audience as aware of our brands, aware of the incredible content they deliver. And I hate to use like an old phrase from our former research head, Dave Poltrak, but he used to give this story about like how as people got into their 40s and had kids, they would transform from being active out in society to like sitting in their Barcalounger and like watching TV. I think that's an old analogy now. I think, Dave is retired. He was a tremendous leader for us. He was one of my professors back in business school 20 some years ago, but his adage is kind of correct, right? I think what's going to happen is those folks who only want free content, only want it on mobile when they're younger, are going to age into the demographic where they can afford longer form experiences and will want them and will be willing to pay for them or willing to at least spend the time to do it. And so we need to play at both ends of those spectrums with our brands. If we're not, then we're missing that audience as they come into these various forms of their transition through life. And so we need to be that sort of soup to nuts type of media company. I think we have all the brands and all the content capabilities to do it, and we have the strategies to focus on it, but it's about execution, certainly over the next 3 to 5 years.
Got it. And then, on the topic of, we'll call it business school leadership, you are now the CEO of ViacomCBS Digital. How has your leadership style changed over the past few months? And have you been able to develop more personal relationships with colleagues and partners? And how have you accomplished that? I think we're all still struggling in a lot of ways with, I'm sorry to say, the new normal. And I'm so friggin' sick of that saying, but it's a very real thing. And we'd love any words of wisdom you may have there.
So, first of all, I'm sure everyone who I'm talking to on Zoom is sick of my white walls behind me. Everyone jokes that I have like no decorations and behind me. And I don't know what this short closet is for, but we have it in our house. Happens to be across from my desk. Look, I think COVID has really taught us a bunch of lessons that I think a lot of teams realized they could do a lot working differently, right? They could do a lot working from home. And I think as we think about the transition, back as this, this virus likely fades over time, and we find a way to to do better against it, and therefore can return to a more traditional working environment. I think we're going to go back a little differently. I think it's going to be a little bit more hybrid, and we're going to see how that goes. Some are going to want to be fully in, some are going to want to be out, some are going to be in between. But what it does put a challenge as a leader is on how do you connect with a broader set of people, right? I could literally spend all day on Zooms with my direct reports and never talk to anybody else and probably keep operating. But would that be the right way to keep a team together and motivated and driving towards a unified set of goals? So it just puts even more pressure on the types of communication that you have to do as a leader. Certainly all hands type of meetings, which, by the way, we were already a geographically diverse division. We have people all over the world and all over these different offices. So we were already relying on streaming and sort of town halls virtually. So it wasn't like a new thing to do. It's just a new background that isn't a stage and is my, the back of my office. And so I think those become that much more important, the type of sort of email and Slack and constant communication with the team. But I'd also say, like, look, I did this over the past couple of months. I set up basically a skip level meeting with every one of my directs. It's hard, for me, that's about 50 people, and trying to get to 50 people in a period of time. I did ask my EA, could you go one more level down? That was 200 and something people. I said, okay, that will take me over a year. I can't do that. So we got to find a way to do that more efficiently. And then I think, look, as noted, this has been a really strange year, and I think with the Black Lives Matters movement and our push towards a more diverse and inclusive company and culture. And while I take some pride in our division being a leader in that regard and understanding the need for that, prior to this movement happening, but understanding we need to make more strides in how that moves forward. I use that as an example of, like, we put together 5 different town halls with smaller groups of people, 50-ish groups of people that wanted to come and have a dialogue with management about how these things were progressing and what we're going to go after. And that really helped shape our goals and what we were going after. And so it really is about reaching out and finding that communication. It's not style, that level, right? That amount that you can do, in this virtual environment. And I, for one, can't wait to get back into the offices. I love management by walking around and talking to people and seeing how things are going. But you have to find your ways to do it in this regard. And look, stay close with your teams in the ways that you can. And those notes matter, those Slacks matter, those Zooms matter, and also giving people time to not be on them. I think people are thanking me sometimes when I'm not doing. I'm just offering conference calls instead of Zoom, so they can put their t-shirt on and not worry about it. But all things to all people, that you have to let them each sort of figure out their own path through it and try to find the best way to make them as productive as they can be. And what I love about our team is that we're really, I don't want to say singularly, but really focused on goals, really focused on what we want to get to. And so each of these divisions and these subdivisions have goals that they're going after. And I've kind of blown through all the traffic ones this year, but I think next year is going to be a great opportunity to blow through both, sort of on all metrics and see how that goes.
Awesome. Well, I think we're about out of time. It looks like Jeremy's about to come kick us out. But Marc, thank you for your time, your thoughts. I learned a lot, and I always enjoy talking with you. So appreciate it.
You too, Brendan. Appreciate it, and good to talk with you all.
All right, Jeremy, back to you.
Jeremy's the guy on mute in the meeting that always.
Thanks. Oh man,
That'll be one per meeting. There it is. This is
all right. First being moderator flaw today. That was great. Thank you so much. I also learned a lot, and it's certainly an exciting time for the company. So really appreciate both of you giving us your time. Cool. Okay. Thanks, guys. So listen, there's a lot of sessions still ahead of us. As a quick reminder to our audience, please feel free to share today's links with friends.